Good evening, Warren.
Mr. Belquist, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing tonight?
Well, I'm very well. We are recording a little earlier this week than our normal time, but the people out there don't know that. But we have a very special guest coming on this week. This is now episode number 15.
That's correct.
I got it right this time.
That's all good. We are making our way through year one of Space 1999.
Really, really hard to believe. It's been, essentially 15 weeks since we started this.
Yeah, which is basically 2.5 months, which is kind of crazy. Actually, coming up on 3 months, really, at the 16-week mark. Yep. But with that said, I'm going to give a little tidbit in case folks out there have not guessed. We are going in production order. And with that said, here's the ITC summary that is for this episode. The centuries roll back for the occupants of the moon through a time warp of 40,000 years to the Stone Age and meeting up with themselves as cavemen. Of course, we are talking about the full circle.
The full circle. And listen, you'd mentioned this episode. I keep even forgetting to name our show when we come on every week, but I think everybody knows it. Welcome, of course, to Space 1999. This episode, we'll dive right into that wonderful opening and come back with a very special guest.
Sounds good. I always love that opening.
They used to have there was a promo reel that ITC put out with just this episode segments. And it was like you just sat there mesmerized, just watching them one after the other.
It never gets old, right, David?
No, never did. Never did. It's always exciting.
Well, welcome, David Hirsch, the one and only. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Welcome back, David.
Yeah.
Sorry, Roy, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, with that said, welcoming back David Hirsch, and who is a friend, a fan, a huge contributor of things Space 1999. In fact, back in the 70s, David.
Oh, you make me feel so old.
We're right there with you.
What do we got here? I got a couple books here, I think.
Oh, yeah. I got the Star Logs in the back.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just I told you we were doing painting, so I had to move around all the tubs of all the back issues.
Yeah, that never gets old. I'll tell you, I love going back to those early issues of Starlog and just start going through them. In fact, I'll talk about it later, but Starlog number 10, which has When Worlds Collide.
Right.
Covered. And then there's a nice tidbit, from Jerry Anderson's Space Report of Space 1999 in that issue. So I never get tired of saying it, David. You were the source of a lot of information back in the day with Starlog. We had no internet, and the fact that we could rely on that, I remember counting the days when that Starlog issue was going to be coming out. It was a bi-monthly publication, and I'd be like, I gotta get to the bookstore because I know that the issue is going to be coming out, and I would be looking to make sure that the space report was in there, and if it was skipped, I'd be like, oh no, it's not in this issue.
Well, it was all up to how fast I could get Jerry to turn around stuff. And when we went to monthly, oh, that got even worse.
Yeah,
I had to start supplementing columns because he couldn't keep up.
Things didn't happen overnight back in the day, hey?
No, international mail, the dark ages of publishing,
Yeah.
as I used to call it. I remember when we used to do it by candlelight.
Fast forward, here we are now, 2025.
I mean, I'm doing all this stuff on my computer now that I used to have to send out to studios. I mean, we're still talking about the Super Space Theater movies, and I'm like, yeah, I could do these whole movies on my computer now.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Probably a whole lot better too,
And I was going to mention those right off the bat, David, because I think last week we were talking about something, and it was really, and speaking of your contributions over the years, but it was really those compilation movies that, in my mind, when you look at it back in the 80s, because Roy had mentioned last week that with only 2 seasons, there wasn't really enough for a full syndication package to a lot of stations. So in the 80s, it was really those compilation movies. And the distribution thereof that sort of kept this series alive in the 80s and leading into the 90s before the advent of Laserdisc and DVD.
Yeah, well, that was the whole idea because cable stations were screaming for product. They wanted something to supplement the theatrical movies.
Yeah.
And ITC was just basically sitting on the shows. They couldn't get anyone to really buy them. It was great when the shows first came out, but most syndicated shows had to be 100 episodes on average because they'd run them, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Now, and on that, were the stations and like, were these packages sort of geared towards later time, like late night programming as opposed to prime time, or
You mean the Super Space Theater movies?
The Super Space Theater movies? Yeah.
Oh, no, because you have to remember they were. We did a lot of the puppet shows too.
Yeah.
And
right. Yeah, sure.
So they were
compiled.
Well, UFO was the first one we did, and I believe actually Canada was the first country to air the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Alien Attack, which was the first one. Destination Moonbase Alpha, which was the first one completed, was the only one that had a theatrical run in a couple of countries.
Yeah.
And then Alien Attack came out, and I don't think it actually made it to any theaters. But it was because those 2 movies that Bob Mandel and I kind of brainstormed the idea. Let's make a package for cable television, because he knew a package would sell a lot better than individual movies.
Yeah.
But we still had a problem with the sale with, HBO only took Thunderbirds to the rescue. The rest of them ended up on Showtime.
Yeah.
I think the 1999 movies had very little coverage, and I think that was because the Landows weren't happy with any of the movie versions. I think they had only agreed to them outside the United States.
I remember you saying that, David, when we were talking a while ago. And I remember, too, I think it was Starlog 17 or 18, probably 18, that you were covering about Destination Moonbase Alpha,
Right.
That, if there was going to be a Space 1999 movie for fans to potentially look forward to, this would be it, because it was going to be released theatrically. And my fingers were crossed potentially that it would be in the U.S., but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But there was talk about it. And then, later on hearing about it. And then, of course, obviously there was the release that was on VHS and,
Right.
Fast forward to now.
Yeah. Destination Moonbase Alpha actually got released by CBS Fox.
Yes.
So that was actually a pretty prestigious release, but it was really a rental only copy because I think I had to obtain mine secondhand because it was like $80 to $100.
It was like $100. Like
Right. No, when videotapes first came out, I remember, I think Superman the movie was the first VHS tape I bought, and that was over $100.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was, so it was tough getting stuff at the time. None of the other the other two movies that got released were the ones on the Sybil Danning adventure video, which really got Martin Landau's back up,
Yes.
because they really were kind of making fun of the genre.
Yeah.
But the other ones, the puppet ones, all came out on Family Home Entertainment, in these big cardboard boxes with those clamshells inside. So they put out, I think all the puppet ones, and Invasion UFO came out on some odd label.
It's funny. We had we didn't have HBO, but we had something called Prism, which was out of Philadelphia. It was the same thing, but it was a regional. It was something local to the Philadelphia area. We were within two hours of Philly, and I remember seeing Invasion UFO on there.
Yeah.
Watching it, and it was like a 2-hour movie compilation of, I think, about maybe 2 episodes.
No, that one we were really ambitious on, and I think it's like 4 or 5 episodes, because there's 3 basic episodes that were cut into it, and then we cherry picked footage to link
the episodes together.
So it was something we did, and then after we finished it, we were like, well, that was a lot of effort. We can't afford to do this. So it was strictly just find episodes that we could link together without any kind of linking material.
It would pair together nicely. Because, again, that amount of editing back in the day versus what you and I can do today on the computer.
Well, it was all done on videotape.
Right.
They struck brand new 35 millimeter footage. We got, all these pristine prints from London, plus we got all the title sequences without the titles.
Okay.
So we were able to utilize those sequences instead of cutting around them. And then that got transferred to video, and then the editing would be done on video. And unfortunately, they did video effects because that, in the late 70s, early 80s, that was the new big thing in Hollywood.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's why a lot of shows from the 80s and early 90s don't look so great on DVD and Blu-ray because they were post-production on video.
Yeah.
Star Trek: The Next Generation, and the shows that followed were all done that way.
That's why it took such a long time, I think, for Star Trek: The Next Generation actually to go to Blu-ray, and then they didn't do it with the latter episodes or the latter.
Paramount rebuilt the episodes from the ground up.
Deep Space Nine has not been released, and Voyager and so forth, for that very reason that you.
Yeah, they said they were going to do an upscale of it, but it kind of like just brought it slightly up to more video quality. And if you watch them on Paramount Plus, the episodes look very pixelated.
Yeah.
I think they can do better now with some stuff. I know BBC has a division that does a lot of upscaling. They've been doing it with the Doctor Who's. They did a really good job upscaling Terrorhawks for Blu-ray. And next month, Anderson Entertainment's releasing Space Precinct upscaled.
Oh, okay.
Which I hope they fix the audio replacement sound, because they did a demo that's on YouTube of one episode, and all the dialogue that's been re-recorded now sounds like it's in the room as opposed to sounding completely different. Because you heard that a lot in Space Year 2 as well. Anytime, like what's his name? Not Pask.
Ettrick.
Ettrick was completely redubbed, and he sounds terrible.
Yeah.
And
Peter Duncan in
Pantor, Pantor as well. I mean, it's just terrible voice replacement. But
yeah, it's funny. I finally had the chance in London when Peter showed up. I asked him if he'd be willing to work with a few of us on maybe re-recording that, and he was open to it. And it's easy enough to do. Like I said, with today's technology, I mean, I could lay that in no problem and come up with a nice new version of Exiles. The Super Space movies, honestly, and I think why I asked that question is because in Canada, see, I had no idea down in the States that they actually hit some of the premium cable channels, which is great.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
Canada, it was only on the they were only on the CBC. I only ever recall Destination Movies Off and Alien Attack, but they were very very late night, between like after midnight scheduled. So it was
Well,
very
it was all that programming, thought that science fiction was for kids or adults that stay up late. I mean, I remember when Space Precinct premiered here, and it was at midnight on Channel 11.
Mhm.
I don't know, Channel 11 of all stations. I don't know why, because they ran all the other Anderson shows, but for some reason it got buried at midnight.
Wow.
It was terrible.
Yeah, no, I mean, in general, guys, I mean, and I've said this time and time again, as Space 1999 fans, we were very, very fortunate for the way it was and the cameras used at the time, because it's led to the beautiful HD transfers that we have
Well,
today.
with 30, yeah, because it was filmed on 35 millimeter. So, I mean,
Right.
we're blessed with that.
And all the visual effects were done in camera, basically, so you don't have the degradation. I mean, I was just in the mood recently to rewatch the revival of Battlestar Galactica,
Mhm.
and you could see that there are shots where there's much more film grain. Although I think in the special effects they put a lot of grain in just to make it look less CG and more film. But it's like it hits you in the face. You could tell this scene is different.
Right.
In space, there's such consistency. The only time you notice anything wonky now is when they have like the optical effects, which are kind of few and far between.
Yeah, it's amazing after 50 years how they hold up. The majority of the effects really still hold true. I mean, there's only maybe a handful that could potentially be tweaked, which were with the Super Space Theater, which was amazing.
I find it fascinating that people complain about that, because I know that UFO is coming out in Australia, and the company's touting the fact that they've corrected the corrections. And I'm like, I watched it. I didn't have a problem with.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too.
Yeah, my whole thing is, as long as you do not destroy the original, as long as the original is available to relish in, why should it? I personally don't think there should be an issue.
There are some things that when you go to high definition, you have to. I mean, if they said, "Oh yeah, we did all this wire removal," and there were shots with Eagle, the wires were, very visible, and we took them out.
Yeah,
I wouldn't complain. I mean, people were complaining when Toho did a 4K remastering of Rodan, and there's one scene. Most of the Rodan shots are of a puppet, but they have one sequence where it's a guy in a suit, and he jumps off a building into a rail yard, and the wires are very visible.
Mm-hmm.
And they took them out, and people were complaining, and I'm like, really?
Yeah. Well, you can't make everybody happy.
No.
And again, to me, as long as you have the original that you can go back to it.
Yeah.
That to me, it's.
Well, I mean, I love the fact that they corrected the reused sequence in Testament of Arcadia, where they're walking out of the Eagle, and they corrected the sky color.
Yeah.
Because that just was really in your face, and I think they at one point did try to correct the Eagle coming out of the sun instead of behind the sun, but I think on the recent Blu-ray it still comes out from behind. But that's, what can you do?
Yeah, you see, it's a fine line, because when you look at the two remaster efforts for Star Trek and Next Generation, Star Trek was more of they had to just build everything from the ground up.
Oh yeah, well, especially the original series, because the visual effects were grainy, and stuff, and they really look. If you watch the Blu-ray with the original effects, some episodes are really bad.
Yeah. Versus Next Gen, where they just did the tweaks, right? I mean,
they just cleaned up the elements and whatever. I mean, Tim Mallett did some little tweaking when he did the Super Space Theater movies, he got rid of the car. He made the cardboard eagle blowing up look just a little bit more three-dimensional.
Yes.
And there were still people complaining about that. I mean, come on, it's.
I enjoyed that. Also, my other thing that always made me kind of flinch was in Bringers of Wonder at the very beginning of part 1 when the eagle's on the screen, and it
the eagle on the string started dancing around.
Yes,
Which was, that was the problem with the fact that the second series was done at such a breakneck pace.
Right.
That you do the best you can and move on.
And that's no reflection. I mean, with Brian Johnson.
No, God, the fact that they did the level of effects they did.
Beautiful effects.
With the time they had.
Absolutely. I mean, they hold up to this day.
The biggest difference with between series 1 and 2 was series 1 with they had time to do things. They had time to experiment.
Yeah.
So if they had to do an effect and they wanted to get it right, they could do some test shoot. In the second series, in like Lambda Factor, they ended up with that really bad-looking pinwheel because that was the quickest thing they could mount and do, and they really didn't have time to go back and do it because the show was getting so close to its air dates,
right?
Which they didn't have the problem with series 1.
But I still got to give them credit because in series 2, actually, a lot of people say they went above and beyond, even over series 1. So it's like maybe those big screen shots were like sort of low on the priority list, and they were done last, right?
Or they were done at a time when they were really slammed.
Yeah.
Because there are still some very effects heavy episodes in that show.
Absolutely,
definitely. Well, you know what? This is the great thing about the three of us coming together like this. We actually have had a wonderful conversation. We're almost 24 minutes into it. We haven't even covered the full circle.
I know. You wanted me to show the moon buggy that appears in the show, and I just realized my name's in front of half of it. So I'm going to lift it just a little so people could see it. So hopefully the wheels won't fall off because they are kind of loose.
That is so cool.
This is the one that you see with everyone rolling behind the Eagle engines, and in the first series, this was the largest version. There is a motor in it, but it's kind of heavy, and I never found the motor. I don't know if it's the motor being old. It never really worked. This here is the actual button that's supposed to start it, but I took the battery out a long time ago. And the Koenig figure, there were 2 Koenig figures made. This one's of like a plaster of Paris, so he's very brittle. They were all modeled off these Airfix soccer players, football players. They had a whole line of football players kicking. If you look really close, you could see he's actually wearing shorts. But I think what they did was they made copies, molds of them, and then they dressed them up, tried to smooth them out. I mean, I give them credit. They actually painted a little comm lock on them, too, that cool. You wouldn't have seen at all from that distance. But they made a couple of figures. I mean, I think there's an Allen figure. There's a Russell figure. There may have been a Bergman one too, but this is the only one that I know has survived. And this other Koenig that someone had, which was the exact same pose. He was just made from different material.
No, thanks for sharing that with us, the viewers too.
But while we're on it, I mean, Dave and Roy had mentioned earlier, so that moon buggy was also in Last Enemy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this is the largest one that was built for Series 1. When they did Series 2, they built a big one that was radio controlled, which you've seen in some of the behind the scenes footage.
In the behind the scenes footage, right. Yes.
In fact, you can't really see it, but the around the little control column here is some orange paint from the spacesuits.
Oh. Okay.
So when they had the astronaut figures, that would have been fun to have.
Oh,
the astronaut figures probably were touched up in there. And the interesting thing, too, is that the little pit here where the people sit is actually wider than on the real moon buggy because there's barely enough room for one person to sit there. They also kind of fake the front. Get it over here.
Yeah.
The front actually comes down really fast instead of that long taper. I actually have a die-cast toy that I picked up at a hobby shop in Manhattan once that I repainted to match this, and that's in scale with the 22-inch Eagle. And you could see it's much different perspective. I think just because they were all handmade.
So cool.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Well, full circle, I tell you, among everything else, guys, it was sort of like the moon buggy was well featured.
Oh yeah.
Whether it be miniature or the full size one in particular we probably saw it more
Well,
in this
we see it
episode.
again in Infernal Machine. It takes them to Gwent.
Yeah, that's right.
It probably, it shows up in a lot of episodes, but it's kind of hard to tell sometimes from a distance which one is this one. It's got this little tank here on the back that some of them don't have, but it's just trying to pick them out from a distance.
It's remarkable that yeah, I mean, you can tell. I mean, I'd have no idea. I had no clue. All these little.
It's a question of just knowing the difference between all the models. It's like picking out the eagles.
The different eagles.
The 44s are fairly easy because you could tell from the detailing on them.
By looking at the box.
The 22 is obvious because the landing gear legs don't have as much detail on them. Eagle 11's a little harder to tell when it's in long shots, other than the fact that it's got very flat feet, and the engines look a little wonky because I found shots of it early on where it definitely, the way the engines are now is the way it was in Mission of the Darians, so it got dropped hard at some point.
Now, Eagle 11 was also used in the end credits too.
Oh yeah. That was probably shot very early on. So
yeah,
this is great because in all these episodes, Roy, we haven't really had a segment on the special effects and modeling. So this is awesome.
Yeah, no, this is a
well.
great
this episode also features Eagle 2 a lot. Eagle 2 actually was first used in Last Sunset, but I can't quite remember. I didn't go back and watch the episode recently. I'm not sure if both Eagles are in the same shot the way they are here a lot. And of course, we have the dreaded cardboard eagle in the background.
The best example of the cardboard cutout, yeah.
Right, yeah. Which may in fact be the same cardboard cutout that was used in Missing Link.
Right. Yeah, I always thought it was interesting because you have the two that are parked next to each other, and then what happens is once Eagle 3 is supposedly coming in, which is an Eagle 3, and that's Eagle 1, right? Or I can't tell. Wait a minute. I'm trying to say.
No, the Eagle coming in for a landing is Eagle 1. Eagle 2 is landing, but it throws such a shadow on Eagle 2 and nothing on the cardboard, and that's what kind of gives it away. It's too bright.
Yeah. And plus, they shifted positions the way they were like parked originally, and again because that's to make room for what is supposed to be Eagle 3, which is, like you said, Eagle 1 that's coming in.
Also, I think there's a scale issue. I think it's probably the same size as the Eagle models. It should be a lot smaller, but.
It's funny you mention that, but it does look like the same cutout in Missing Link because it looks like whoever cut it out wasn't following the lines very well, and
ideally, I think it's probably there because that's about as far deep as the set is. Because they could have gotten away with putting the 22-inch Eagle and made it look like it was sitting just further away. They didn't have to sit on top of each other, but it just could have been because of the depth of the set.
Right.
Because you have to get the models a certain distance from the camera to get your right depth of field anyway. So.
And there again, one other thing, and I think I even touched on this in the convention booklet recently. We are so privileged as a fandom that all of these original props and models have been preserved all this time, right? By people like yourself, Dave, and Dave Sisson, and Andrew Frampton, and Darren Peters, and Jim Winch, and Daryl Simmons, and on and on and on. I mean, these would have hit the trash bin years ago if it wasn't.
Yeah, well, I wish I was still in the position to retain a lot of the stuff that passed through my hands as snow.
Phil Ray originally.
Well, yeah, most stuff came from Phil Ray, except for the 11-inch Eagle that came from Martin Bauer.
Yeah,
because he was restoring the models for the Space City exhibitions, and I think they just decided it's too small and they didn't want to display it. I don't even think they displayed the 22. I don't remember it ever being on display. I only saw the 3 44s.
And it's a shame we don't know what happened to Eagle One. I mean, that's
I think that's
Peter Jackson.
Rumor's always been that Peter Jackson has it, and he probably was the mystery buyer of all the Greg Jean stuff.
Yeah.
Which most of it came from me originally.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened to the space dock, because my understanding was that the person that I sold it to Greg, but it wasn't in the stuff that was auctioned off. So I don't know what happened to it.
Yeah, unless he maybe sold it to someone before that. I don't know.
It's possible. I think I sold one of the big Alpha buildings to Luke Place, and then he went and sold it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Things got handed, and if it's in the hands of people who appreciate it, that's great. It's just a shame we can't track it down. I mean,
right.
I fell out of touch with one of the guys that bought a couple of models for me, like Dione's escape ship and the small Earthbound ship.
Yeah.
And I've tried to get in touch with him to see if he would come to the conventions and display the stuff. And
have you been able to get a hold of him or no?
No.
Sorry to hear that.
Nobody seems to be in touch with him anymore. It happens,
Yeah. No, of course.
Even just the fact that the set pieces, right, ended up at Blackpool and didn't hit the trash bin, right? Whereas so many other productions, yeah, those computer walls would have been long gone. But
I think that's because Jerry was able to do the exhibitions.
Right. Yeah.
It's expensive. Sorry, there's like a text thing going on. Jerry's, to save this stuff in storage is expensive. That's why most studios just trash it. But Jerry saved it because he knew he could get an exhibition, and because there wasn't another show, it was a way to do income. And then when they stopped wanting the exhibitions, then deals were made to sell off the stuff.
David, I don't think I ever asked you, do you have pictures from extensive pictures from Blackpool?
I have some, but it was a really hard place to take pictures of. I mean, everybody I've talked to who put up pictures, they all had the same problems I did. The place was very dark.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff was behind reflective glass.
Sure. So yeah.
I mean, I would love if somebody came up with a picture showing my working comlock at the exhibition, because you used to walk up to a booth and it was sitting there in the display and there was a camera hidden and you see your face on the comlock.
Yeah.
But I've got no pictures of it because I think it was just impossible to shoot.
Right. Somebody out there must have something. I mean, because every now and then things will pop up on the internet.
Yeah.
And it's
but they all look just like mine. They look washed out.
Right.
Because you're trying to take a flash picture, and you're shooting a lot of white models, and they come out overdone.
Right.
So I think the best picture I ever did was took a picture of a hawk, and now that's everywhere.
Wow.
That's okay.
So in regards to this episode,
we're talking about an episode.
What episode are we doing again?
I'll bring us back. This episode has a lot of firsts in it, and it's definitely a fun episode. I wouldn't say it was one of my favorites. It wasn't definitely not a favorite, but it's unique. I mean, for the very first time, they're out on location. I mean, it's exterior shoot, which is great. I mean, with the exception of, if you don't count the last sunset where they were.
All right. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the few episodes that's done outside.
Yeah.
I made up a pro and con list for it just to show you how much. I mean, here is the things that are the best things about it. I have to look over the box here. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah,
it's an episode that allows the supporting cast to shine.
Absolutely.
So it's the first time you actually see them carry a show.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of great character dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
We learned for the first time that Kano's a wise ass.
Yep.
But a funny wise ass.
I hate backseat drivers.
Yes. So you have, this location shooting in Black Park, which they returned to a couple of times in the second series, but it was their first time, and just for fun stuff, it has one of the rare close-ups of the BioWatch, which is almost never used in the show, even though it was a major point in George Balak's original story treatment for the show. So that's the fun things. It's the last program Barry Gray ever scored, at least partially, for Jerry Anderson.
Wow.
He didn't do anything for them after that. The only episode that actually had any scoring was Troubled Spirit for the sitar sequence. The bad thing about the location shooting is my understanding was it rained quite a lot during those days. Yeah. So except for the 1 or 2 days where it's obviously very sunny, it was very cold and wet. So much so that Landau and Bain never went on location.
I read about that they basically were shot on the grounds of Pinewood Studios. They did not want to venture. Yeah.
Black Park is right next to Pinewood.
It is. They didn't go beyond. They didn't go beyond the Pinewood grounds.
I think this sequence was probably the only thing they shot on location. When they were in the caveman getup, they didn't go any further.
Yeah.
Because it was cold. I had at one time had the costumes, and Martin's uniform was very warm, so he would not have been cold in that thing.
Right.
Unlike the caveman outfit. And of course we have the caveman outfits, which were not exactly warm either.
No. And we should remind our viewers too, this episode was filmed it was actually the shooting dates were September 24th to October 8th of 1974, which is in the dead of autumn. Now it could go one or two ways. It could be, we have, hot, autumn, summer, kind of carries over, but then we also have those cold days and
cold, rainy days. Yeah.
This is what happened with this specific episode.
And that's what I understand when Xenia shot her sequences, it was very cold.
Yeah. And you can even tell the time of day, because in the mornings in fall, right, you'll quite often get that misty, hazy sort of look.
Yeah. Well, all that mist was done by dry ice, which, if you look very carefully when Alan takes off in the moon buggy, he's kind of knocking a couple of little blocks of dry ice on the ground. Whenever it's bubbling up, that's a little cube of dry ice.
Huh. That's interesting. Didn't catch that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. You have to look for it. It was a couple of things that I read in some trivia about the show that I started to look for when I was rewatching it.
It's good to know.
The cave, of course, was a repaint of the ice cave from Deaths of the Dominion, which was the previous episode shot, and I think it took them about a week to redo the cave, into the caveman cave, because they spent the first week after finishing that episode shooting all the Eagle and main mission stuff, and then shooting. Then they went into the cave about a week later.
And then there was also the issues that they dealt with from Deaths of the Dominion with the formaldehyde and then the smell, and then trying to repurpose that for this episode. So they were actually going back to that. So there was some dealings with that.
Well, I think the formaldehyde was when they first built the set.
From the snow.
Make it look snowy. I think once they repainted it to look like a rock cave, I think that covered up a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, I had read though that I guess Martin Landau wasn't too happy about going back to that specific set though, just because of everything that it was bringing up memories of that. It was interesting too. You were talking about Xenia, because she had talked about how she was running and doing all that in that leopard skin, and what they were doing was they gave her something to drink, and she was joking, thinking maybe it was hot tea, and what it was brandy. So she was kind of getting a little tipsy and having fun, with that as well too.
Yeah, I understand she was also eaten up by bugs.
Yeah,
too. You have also it's the first and only time in the first series where we see the stun kill switch.
Yes.
If you look very carefully, it's not always on Alan's gun.
Yes.
It's mostly in the shot where we actually see the close up, like an insert shot. Yeah. But when he first goes running into the cave, it's definitely not on the gun.
It's always fun to look for those little tidbits because
Yeah.
you'll see how it switches, and it's just for those appropriate moments that they actually have it for that specific scene.
Yeah.
Also, talking about the other prop, the comm lock, the working comm lock is used extensively in this episode.
Yes.
Too.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yep.
And Roy, I know you're a prop guy, and we talked about whenever you were watching Star Trek original series, you'd always love it when they show a close up of one of the props, the phaser, the communicator, right?
Especially the communicator, yeah.
I loved when I first saw this as a kid. I loved this scene with Oliver Cotton there in the pit, handling and fumbling with the comm lock and hearing the ringtone, if you will. It was great.
Well, I think that picture there, that's one of the standard prop ones, because the working one has 4 of those little square buttons on the midsection.
Yeah.
So you only saw the work. I think those were all probably done in studio insert shots.
Yeah. No, it was a fun episode. I think it was probably when I first saw it, it was probably more of a favorite than it is now. It's one of those episodes that for me anyway, it doesn't have the rewatchability.
Let's get into what's wrong with the episode.
Okay.
So the first thing that goes wrong in the episode, which is bizarre, is when Koenig brings the Eagle 6 back on remote control.
Yes.
I mean, it's only done to get the caveman back to Alpha, to eventually find out he's got caps on his teeth. But the first thought is, well, essentially, what if these people come back and the Eagle's gone? And it's their only shelter.
Yeah.
That's kind of a weird thing to do. The episode's biggest crime is the time span. It really plays fast and loose with the time. We're led to believe that they're only going to be in range of Retha in 3 days. And night on Retha is only 2 hours. So exactly, we're talking 3 days on Retha, 3 days on Alpha, we don't know. But how does a group of Alphans go into Mist, become cave people, start a civilization, have a cave with cave paintings and tools, and build a pit to trap animals within minutes?
Yeah.
Because that's how it seems. I mean, there was a theory that the Mist is a time warp, but that doesn't explain how Bergman and Kano can walk around to the other side. I mean, it really stretches the credibility. You have, they made animal skins, and we never see an animal. We see a footprint of what looks like a dinosaur. We hear a roar of something, but we never see anything.
Right.
Okay, that's a TV budget thing. People going through the Mist and changing from their Alphan uniforms to Stone Age clothes. Again, that's more of because, well, you can't show naked people on television. So that happens on a lot of shows. How do people change how they look, and their clothes change the same way? So it has things, but it's the time factor. I mean, where it's really, really obvious is they bring Koenig back, and Koenig looks like he's on the point of death. He's got this huge purple bump on his head, and he's back on Alpha, and he's fine. I mean, they don't seem to have skin regeneration techniques on Alpha. It's like, how is he suddenly all fine? He's raring to go.
But it was that time frame that bothered me the most, was the travel time back in the
Yes.
Right.
It's like driving to the store.
Yeah, it's
Well,
like
here's the
a
thing.
20-minute cruise. Yeah.
It took forever. It took forever for Bergman and Kano to get down to the planet to meet up with Sandra. And then when Koenig is getting, he says, "Bob, get me my clothes," and then he's headed down there, and everything's happening with, Helena as the cave woman, and she's got Sandra tied up, and then everything. And then the next thing you know, they've landed. They're in the moon buggy. Right. They're on their way to the cave, and then boom, it all takes place, and it all happens. I mean,
I don't know what the original script was like, because I know that after Jesse Lasky Jr. and Pat Lasky turned the script in, who, by the way, they were American writers who were friends of Barbara Bain. That's how they got the gig. The story is that Bob Kellett heavily rewrote the script. Now, we don't know whether or not Kellett decided, I got to move things along, or something happened in the editing process. Because I know from having the original shooting scripts to Breakaway that there was stuff lost in the edit because they had to move things along. And sometimes you have to say, we'll live with it.
Yeah, what I came across was when diving deep with this, to your point, he had a huge, Jesse Lewis Jr. had an extensive background with writing. He'd done like 30 different movies. I mean, one of them that he did was the Ten Commandments, which I was very pleased to hear about. Samson and Delilah. He wrote for The Saint, the Danger Man, The Protectors, but really had never dealt with science fiction. And then I guess what happened was, to your point, when it came to what they had, his wife had now this was his second wife that had assisted him with the writing of this. I guess Christopher Penfold, from what I read, was not too happy about it, and that's where Bob Kellett was brought in. Really do. And Bob Kellett pretty much did all the revisions with this.
Yeah.
And there is no copy of this script from what I've read that is the original, that it's available.
Yeah.
Also, Martin Landau did a lot of tweaking too with the dialogue that came through. Well, so it had its issues, it had its problems, and from the start, unfortunately. And this was essentially like the end result.
See, the only thing that makes me suspicious that may have been Bob Kellett, taking shortcuts, is that we know that he wrote and was directed Last Enemy, and Last Enemy came out short.
I remember you saying that,
which was unusual because most of the times the episodes come out long and you have to cut them down. Right. It came out short and they had to pad it out, which, I guess he's just more of an action director and he wanted more visual stuff. I mean, he does. There are great visuals and great camera work. I give him credit for getting the camera into that center section of the Eagle, because that I don't think that had removable walls. I think that was a solid section.
And I think that's really one of the first times we actually saw a shot going straight down to the.
No. I think you do that in Black Sun.
Oh, you're right.
Black Sun, they do it. But I think it's the only time we're actually in that area, except for Dragon's Domain.
Okay.
But I couldn't be sure if I'm looking at that section or it's supposed to be the Ultra Probe section that he gets the rope and the axe from, because they were virtually similar sets.
Right, and the problem, I mean, we'll talk about this with Dragon's Domain. The problem with that is, if he's taking the command module to go to the Ultra Probe, that section that he broke, when he jettisoned the rest of the Eagle, should not be there.
No, it shouldn't be there based on how Brian Johnson designed the Eagle.
Yeah.
But how the set wound up, because don't forget, in Missing Link, when they separate the nose cone, Conan's feet is sticking out the door on the stretcher,
and I had a problem. I had a problem with that too, because that door should not have been open theoretically.
No.
And because that section would have been in that compartment.
Right. But that's a case of set's only this big. He's this big.
Yep.
What do we do?
Yeah.
Do we prop him up over the control panel? What do we do? These are things that happen in TV, and at the pace it goes, sometimes you have to just hope for the best, that people won't, notice too much.
I'll be honest with you, I noticed that 50 years ago.
Oh, I know, but I'm just saying their idea is, hopefully nobody will notice this.
And I'll even take it a step further. We haven't covered year 2 yet. That was one of the first things I noticed was, wait a minute, what happened with the in between section? Yeah, the corridor section in the Eagle, and you and I have talked about this. This was probably one of the first questions I asked you.
Well, it was. It's obvious looking at the stage blueprint. It was the section was taken out because they had limited room.
Yeah,
to use it as a standing set, because the Eagle's set used to be movable. Yeah. It wasn't just always on the stage. I mean, I have, let's see, on the shooting schedule for Full Circle, The Eagle passenger module was on stage H, but there were times when the Eagle was in this covered corridor between the stages. Because of the length of it, it could fit in the area between the stages. And they also took the passenger module, its section itself, out to Black Park, or outside, at least outside the studio, to show them walking out of the Eagle.
Which you're leading right into what I was going to say is that's another first that had never been done, which
Yes.
is really cool. Granted, the lights are out, but it's only a section of the set that's actually.
They had to bring the door, and they had to bring the wall with the laser guns on it, because you see that.
That's all you see, but it's so cool that they took the time to do that, and because it adds to the realism of that. You know what, they're at.
Absolutely.
But the same thing can be seen in they show that door opening onto a planet surface in Guardian of Puri, Matter of Life and Death.
But they were able to bring it over to the other soundstage.
Yeah, it's just the other soundstage.
And that's my point.
According to what I have here with the shooting schedule, they were on the studio lot to do that. First day, Tuesday the 24th, they were on the interior of the command and passenger module. They continued on Wednesday, also with Koenig's office and main mission. They did all the medical footage on the following Thursday, and then Friday they went outside to an area of forest, which was on the lot. You were right. They probably were on the lot. They actually didn't go to Black Park, which is not that far from the studio, really. It probably was just like a quick little bus ride. So the first thing they shot was what they called Area 1 Retha Forest. I'm not sure if that little lake was on the studio or not.
The lake is on the studio. Is part of Pinewood.
It is part of Pinewood. Yeah. It could have been. Oh, that's right. It could have been the garden on the other side of the mansion, because that's where they shot like the end for Journey to the Far Side of the Sun, and they shot the Schmersh training camp for From Russia with Love. You're right. That's probably as far as the Landaus went. So they shot from Friday, September 27th to, I guess it was. See, it says the shooting schedule just says lot, so it doesn't really say to me about where they went when they were in Black Park. It just says lot. They may consider Black Park part of the lot.
I read too, David, that I guess in November they actually went back and did an additional scene too of pickup shots towards the middle or end of November for the full circle, which would have been another full month or so after they had filmed.
Well, they were shooting inserts for End of Eternity Collision Course in October, long time after.
Something about November sticks in my mind, and that scene with Xenia when she's tied up on and they're carrying her. I could have sworn she said it was November, and that's why it is.
It may have been. They may have had to gone back because of the rain.
Yeah.
I may not have it on my shooting schedule because in November they were shooting Last Enemy from November 8th, and they were doing pickups for War Games of Guardian of Puri during that time.
I think it was around the time they were doing the Troubled Spirit that they actually did some kind of pickup shot for the full circle, if I remember correctly.
Here it is. No, you're right. Absolutely. Sometime between November 28th and December 4th, they did full circle second unit pickups. So it was a second unit shooting, and they were back in the cave with Barbara Bain as the cave wife doing close-ups. Okay. So I don't know if it was in the actual cave set or they just used a wall, because they also did a Koenig close-up in the mist area at the same time. So I was looking for that. So that was definitely sometime between Thursday and the 28th and December 4th.
Hey, here's another character moment that maybe could have been and maybe it was something again lost in editing, but it's always bothered me when Sandra's in the Eagle and Victor and Connor are coming down and they say, hey, put some lunch on for us, but don't go anywhere. And Sandra's like, oh, don't you worry. Wild horses couldn't carry me out of here. What does she do? She walks.
Oh, she opens the door. Like
Yes.
they don't have Tom locks to let them in the door. It's like, well, they don't have keys. I have to leave the door open.
And she's got the weapons rack that's right there for her.
Right. So all she does is scream and run back into the command module without ever shutting the doors.
Or shutting the door. That's the other thing.
So there is a little bit of logic, but then again, Sandra doesn't get down to planets very much. So
yeah.
Hey, here's a trivia question. There's actually something that appears in this episode that does not appear. It appears in this episode, and we do not see it again in any Space 1999 episodes. Any idea what that is?
No.
Warren?
Go ahead. Tell me.
They said again, one more time.
There's something that appears in this episode, and it's been in other episodes, but then what happens is it does not appear again.
No, wait, are we talking about the episode
I know
or this episode sequence?
No, I'm sorry. When I say this episode, I mean within the show, in the episode.
Right, because we know that this episode sequence
is this episode sequence.
Yeah.
I know what it is.
What is it?
It's one of the. You told me this recently, so it's not that I'm remembering.
Okay, go on.
But it's one of the laser rifle versions.
You got it. Yep. It's the last time we see the armor-piercing laser rifle.
Oh.
The next episode that is shot is End of Eternity, and no, actually, you know what? I stand corrected. It's an End of Eternity. It's in there. Yeah. War Games is the first time we see the other rifle. It's the smaller version. Yeah.
They probably broke them because that's why they had to.
Yeah, probably.
No, because they were all plastic parts all put together. I think the original laser rifle, it had a little Saturn V part on stage 2 part for the barrel, in that little plastic cup thing at the beginning. So they probably broke, because I know I had the laser rifle from, I think it was Space War, and it was all plastic plumbing parts built on a flash gun. That was the to hold it.
That's crazy. Yeah, it looks good on camera though.
No, the same thing. I remember Phil tried to offer me the microscope space warp detector thing.
Yep.
And it's all plastic plumbing parts. It's all that PVC pipe that you have under your sink.
That always drove me crazy that was in Devil's Planet. I mean, it's like little colored dots, which could be human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again,
we're gonna have fun when we get to year 2.
You give them credit. These guys just cobble this stuff together. Really fast.
I mean, it looked good. I mean, if you didn't pick it up, you never knew.
The space warp detector. Now, here's another thing that actually appeared in this episode that we get to see as another prop down the road. It's like a signal locator, where it's almost like a scanner, where they know the direction that the Alphen crew has gone. When they're looking for them. I mean, we see this as one of the Darian's weapons in Mission to the Darians. Yeah. It's used again, and I guess from my understanding, it was a dictaphone microphone.
Could be, could be. It's like Bergman's little X-ray thing was a hairdryer in Earthbound, and the translator in Testament Arcadia was a calculator.
Yeah, because
calculators were that big back then. Well, a scientific calculator.
Anyway.
Yeah. But it was like, these were real things.
Too funny. There were some, Dave, you mentioned some good character moments, and this is the episode where, and Roy and I sort of been tracking this and going through production order, the interpersonal relationships between like Paul and Sandra and now Alan in this episode being sort of thrown into the mix, and Alan's sort of comment about Paul getting jealous.
Yeah. Well, I think it's strictly
like
him just being, I'm your mate. I could have a little fun with your relationship because.
There's
being stodgy about it.
But Paul actually says, my love to Sandra. I mean, that is blatant. I mean, it is out there. Now,
we knew that from Last Sunset. I mean,
absolutely. But I thought it was
right.
a nice.
No, all these nice little touches. The joking about having lunch ready, the backseat driver. I mean, even with the campfire sequence.
Yeah,
too. Sure. It's just these nice moments, because shows like this didn't let the supporting cast usually shine like this.
Yeah.
It wasn't until you got to a show like, Next Generation where they were shooting, 22 episodes a season. They were on for 7 years. And you had to have episodes with supporting cast because your actors were wearing themselves out. Right. But, I give credit to the Landaus for allowing them to take center stage, which was very infrequent. Mm-hmm. I think it was simply because I think they just enjoyed the idea of playing cave people. I mean, Barbara apparently just loved doing it.
They were having fun with this episode for sure. So
there was some reading about.
I guess she was at home, and then I guess one of their daughters came in, and then what happened was Barbara Bain was dressed in.
Yeah, I think it was Susie brought a boy home. she was sitting in front of the mirror trying to get her screams right, and the boy was like, "I don't know what I'm into."
That's pretty awesome.
I mean, you again give her credit. She's always perfectly coiffed and the makeup done through the show, and this gives her a chance to really just go to town, which is unexpected.
Yeah, exactly.
It's unexpected because you would think that they would let more episodes come through like this, but and there were episodes like in the second series where they were on vacation, so they kind of let it happen. Because Space Warp's kind of like that,
Yeah. We were talking about Black Park before. I just want to go back to that. There is so much history in regards to films that have been made there with the James Bond films, the Hammer films with the Dracula. I think of
Doctor Who went there for Castrovalva? No, not Castrovalva. Full Circle. The first Adric episode.
Yeah, I mean it's so cool when you
think. And UFO shot there.
And UFO extensively.
Yeah. Sound of Silence was a lot of heavy shooting there.
And Roy, you've been there twice now. I mean, it is for anybody who hasn't had the privilege. I mean, if you're ever in the area, it's just wonderful to wander around and see all these locations. The memorable one for me and for Roy in when we were there in 2014?
14,
was coming upon the lake used in Rules of Pluton, and the riverbank.
Embankment, right,
with the trees that grow sort of up.
Yeah, I think that's the location they use all the time because they use that for UFO when Foster's spotting the UFO and he's got the mobiles firing on. It's the same location, and I think it was also used in. I think Doctor Who used that same position. I think it's a good photographic position.
No, Roy and I, the first time we were there, we were in a hurry. We were sort of on a time crunch, so we rented a couple of bicycles and rode around to the back of the park because, when you mentioned that it's very close to the sound stages, the park basically backs onto L&M.
I think I'm not sure if the park is part of the Pinewood property or it's owned by the town.
Well, I'm not sure, but it is it's like a community park, which is just pretty amazing. There's a lot. It was like 500.
I mean, I've been to the back end of the main house at Pinewood because Jerry's office was there when he was prepping 5 Star 5, so it overlooked that whole area, which was lovely. I mean, and was it the long sleep episode of UFO?
Sure.
They use it as the it's supposed to be the grounds of the sanitarium, and they use it a couple of times in all the Pinewood episodes of UFO. But the documentary, the Jerry Ensign documentary that Jamie did, he's got that really touching scene where, you know, his father is on the bridge, and then he appears, the bridge over the little pond there. Yeah, you know, now I think about it, they probably Landau's probably only shot there because they had to put dry ice in that water too, and they wouldn't have been able to do that in Black Park.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of history, and yes, that was a lot of fun, Warren. My God, that was like 14 years ago already. It's crazy.
Well, and it was nice you got a chance to go back. I missed it last September, but you took a whole crew out there, and just some wonderful photo opportunities.
Yeah, I'm actually going to have to share a lot of those photos. That's something everything happened.
Pinewood has to have changed drastically since I was there, because
in a lot of ways it probably has, in a lot of ways it probably hasn't.
Well, I know L&M stage where they shot the show is still exactly where it is. It's unchanged.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was there, it was the second version of, I think, the 007 stage, because I was there when they were shooting Krull. So I was on the 007 stage for that. But some of the other stages were virtually identical. I don't think I got back as far as L&M, because then Krull was being shot more towards the front of the studio. And I spent so much time at Jerry's offices in the house.
No,
very difficult to get into Pinewood nowadays, though. But the park itself is, I think, essentially
Well, Pinewood, when I was there, the only way you got into Pinewood was through the gatehouse.
Yes.
Now they have this big, modern gate.
Yeah.
Further down the road, because they couldn't get big trucks in through that. I think they had a service entrance somewhere in the back.
And that's where we went when the bus took us. We pretty much went there, and fortunately we were able to get off the bus. The guardkeeper wanted us to move, and I just asked, can we just take some photos? We'll be on our way. They were very accommodating. They did not give us a hard time. Ironically enough, when we went to Bray Studios, they wouldn't even let us. I went to the guardhouse. They would not even let anyone off the bus at all. It was pretty much, you know what, turn around and please leave.
Bray is
very strict.
Bray, if I remember, was far off the road, because I remember having to go down a long road.
Yeah.
You actually could see Bray better if you go by on a boat.
Like I said, I have to post some of these photos. I just haven't had the opportunity. But
the day trips and excursions that we've experimented with have really they've been a lot of fun for a lot of people.
Yeah, folks haven't had the opportunity to experience.
Of course, and when we went in 2014, Roy, you and I both said, wow, it would be amazing to bring a crew back here.
Oh, definitely.
And wander around sometime. And it took 10 years, but we did it.
David, thanks again for showcasing.
That was wonderful.
Take this stuff off, because it's like going, look at the screen. It takes up so much room. As I said, because I didn't want it rolling off. I think Gordon was the one who picked it up the last time, and the wheels just fell right off. So I realized, they're loose. But
it happens to the best of us, right?
I unfortunately don't have any pictures of Pinewood or Bray, because back then it was like, I'm trying to be professional, and I'm like going, oh, can I have a picture, please? I mean, I still have this picture, this Polaroid of Derek Meddings that he invited me. I spent a lot of time with Derek at Pinewood on Krull, and he invited me over to his house for dinner one night with his family, and we're sitting there. And as I'm leaving, I said, "Gee, I wish I had a picture for you to autograph." And he said, "Oh, I got a Polaroid." He takes the Polaroid, he writes his name on it, going, "How come I didn't ask him if I could be in the picture?"
Hey, the fact that you got to meet him, though, that's pretty cool.
Oh, he was such a nice man. I mean, he insisted once on picking me up at my hotel and driving me to the studio in his Rolls Royce.
Oh boy.
And he was just very accommodating. He let me watch them shoot the Widow of the Web sequence, and he got someone to take me around to the other sound stages, and then I was there for a special effects shooting that they did. There's a scene where Ken Marshall and was it Aubrey Morris? I forget who played.
Aubrey Morris was in, but Widow of the Web in particular was Francesca Annis.
Well, no, I was on the miniature set. I think I got to see the live action set.
Oh, okay.
But I was at the miniature set where they were animating the Crystal Spider.
Oh, wow.
You just said Francesca Annis. Wasn't she in Dune?
Yes.
Yes.
I think she did Dune after that.
Yes, because Crow was 83, Dune came out in 84.
84.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they, we
and but the other person in that scene, sorry, Dave, was Freddie Jones, Roy.
Freddie
Jones was in
Freddie Jones
and Freddie Jones was in Dune. Yeah.
Marshall were sitting around. They were putting in this special effect of some kind of like oracle or something that they were staring into, and I'm watching them shooting. I'm thinking, why is Derek here? Why are they? It's a standard scene. They're sitting on this dark set. Why? And all of a sudden, my brain's going, they're going to blow something up. They're going to blow something up. I'm going to screw this up because I'm going to scream like a little girl. And all of a sudden, they just shot this air cannon at them. And I'm like going, thank God I didn't say a thing. But I got to meet, Ken Marshall, and years later when he was on Deep Space Nine, I didn't recognize him because he was bald.
I didn't know that either.
No, I didn't realize it was him. But it was also, I got to meet Lizette Anthony.
Oh, she's beautiful.
This was her first film, and we sat in the publicist's office, Lily Unger, who was a sweetheart, and we talked for a bit, and then she introduced me to Vic Armstrong, the stunt coordinator, who, of course, doubled for Bond numbers of times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was a great time. That was my first film shoot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Roy, have you ever covered Crawl on your show?
No. What year was that filmed?
It was 80. Well, it was filmed.
Well, 82. It was shot in 82. But
No, I've actually never seen it. So you know what? We'll have to entertain that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's on Tubi till midnight tonight, and they're taking it off.
Oh, geez. We actually did Dune, and that's why I was asking about.
Yeah.
We just covered that.
Yeah, I don't think I ever got to meet her. I just got to meet Ken. I mean, Lizette, I got to talk to, and Ken and Vic Armstrong, I spent the most time with. And then, of course, Derek Meddings and his crew. So, but they toured me around all the sets. I mean,
sure.
That must have been a great experience, David.
Yeah, for somebody who's never been on a film set before, I walk into the castle set, and the first thing, and I always remember this, I walk in, and I see, it looks like a big stone room and stone carved floors, and I put my foot down, and it's like, I'm on linoleum. It's not stone, it's linoleum. And then you walk to the balcony, and there's the outside of the castle, and then you look up, and the studio lights are up there. But the weird thing was on the 007 stage, where they did the swamp, and they had just finished putting up the trees and everything, but they hadn't filled in the pit yet with the water for the swamp. So we essentially walked in the door, and we were on the second floor on rafters that were the set was all elevated above a pool that hadn't been filled. So it was kind of scary.
Now, you said this was for a Bond film. Would this have been Octopussy if it was 82?
No. They were using the 007 stage for the swamp.
Oh, I see.
Because it was a big set.
Oh,
so the Bond weren't shooting at the time,
right.
But this was the second version of the stage after it burnt down for Legend.
Okay.
Ridley Scott was shooting Legend, and then this stage burnt down a couple of years later. I forget which film was on there when that burnt down.
Wow.
It was never burnt down for a Bond film. Go figure that one out.
If you've never seen Crawl, Roy, and David will know exactly where I'm going with this, is that you will, as not only a Star Trek fan, but a Space 1999 fan, you'll get a real kick out of it. Because number one, the soundtrack is by James Horner. It's very reminiscent to his Star Trek II score. Like beat for beat practically.
Horner came in at the last moment because Goldsmith was supposed to score.
Yeah.
Okay.
And secondly, you'll recognize a lot of Space 1999 sound effects in Krull.
Yeah.
Well, and that happened to me in the James Bond film. It immediately comes to Moonraker.
There's a lot of I think it's all the same sound effects people.
Yeah, because especially when they're doing the Bond is going up against Chang, and they're in the art gallery, and what happens is when something goes flying, like all these what was it? It was like a shelf goes crashing down and everything goes down. It's like the noise you hear when one, and they've used it multiple times, but like Voyager's Return when what's the Barry Stokes what was the character's name? It was oh my god,
Jim Haynes.
Jim Haynes, thank you. Haynes is taking the stuff and he's smashing all the equipment. There's a stock sound that they always use, and that was in Moonraker, and I was like, whoa. All the time.
The door opening sounds. Some of them are in Alien or Aliens. The swamps sequence in David. I'm sorry, in Krull that David was just talking about. What's jogs my memory is you'll hear the sound of the thide from A Matter of Balance. In this swamp sequence that David's talking about. So if you've never seen it, you get a hoot and a holler out of it just from little things like that.
No, that's really cool. It's getting back to this episode though. It's funny. I think I have more of an appreciation. This wasn't wasn't one of my favorites when it would be on. I was like, but you know what? It kind of grew on me a little bit. And especially with like a lot of firsts, there's a lot of firsts in this episode too. David, you and I and David were talking about. And again, I think it's really cool that they get to be outside, which just kind of opens things up a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and looks like David's tied up there, but I think we're pretty well ready to wrap things up anyway. A couple of things that it's funny, we opened. And what did you say, 23 or 25 minutes and not even talking about the episode? But the other thing I was going to mention, sorry, go ahead.
Before you jump in, and you reminded me, Warren, with the word open, this is I believe the only episode in at least year one, well, actually I would even say it didn't happen in year two, where when after they do the teaser, the hook goes to the credits, then it comes back on dialogue. It goes right into the dialogue. It's not like there's the title card being showcased.
There's a few other episodes that are like that. Matter of Life just shows the title, but the actual episode credits don't show until Eagle lands. And I know there was something in Internet Movie Database about the credits. Let's see if I can find it. Amazingly, it's still episode 15 here, even though 14 is different.
I'm trying to think of where dialogue would have started in another episode. Basically the title card comes on later than it does. Is what my point.
Right.
Well, the whole title sequence comes on later. Yeah.
And that I think this was the only episode that they did that though.
Yes, in the first series, you're right. Catacombs of the Moon and Immunity Syndrome do the same thing later on, but
yes,
for the first season, it's the one where there's a whole line of stuff between that.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. So Warren, go ahead. I did not mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It's okay. And but really quick, and Dave, thanks again. We're gonna wrap things up here shortly. But I wanted to mention just the fact that this is a little special week for this channel as well. And if anybody hadn't seen it up until this point, we're of course going to drop. This episode will be airing on Sundays as they always do, but actually Roy and I are going to have a special broadcast this Sunday with Yasko coming up, just to give us a little update on things and everything that's going on in California there. And of course, she's going to be able to tell us some details on finally selling her house and moving back to Japan. Yeah, finally.
She was so disappointed that she wasn't there when we went last June.
Right. Yeah, I know she was delayed for sure. So she's really excited.
She did give us a lot of good recommendations while we were there.
That's good. Yeah. So, yeah. No, she's lovely.
Please give her, Renee, and I my best.
Definitely.
Because and I tried to, as I said, I tried to contact her about the trip, and the emails just kept bouncing back for some bizarre reason.
Yeah. If you don't have a new one for her, I think we've got a new email address for her.
Yeah, we can talk about that offline. Absolutely.
Yeah. But let her know, because, as I said, we'll be probably in the air or something. While that happens, although no, I think we'll be down by the time you do it, because I think we'll be there by noon.
Yeah. What time are we going live, Roy? We're going live at 9 a.m.
It's going to be 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah. This Sunday.
Sunday.
You'll find a link here and on Facebook. So
yeah. Yes, and with that said, make sure, if you have not already, please follow us on Facebook.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Yep. It does not cost anything. It is,
and we will have some, of course.
Thanks for showing the book.
Yep.
Still available on Amazon.
Yeah. And we'll even have some convention updates coming up this Sunday. So be sure to tune in for that as well. Right, Roy?
Absolutely. Do not want to miss that. And we are 8 months out, so it's coming.
Yep, for sure. Okay, well, thank you both so much.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you, David.
Gentlemen. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun as always. And
if you do Kroll, Roy, let's talk about it.
I know. I'm excited, I think that would be a really good show or segment.
I am marking that down as we are speaking. And speaking of the show,
yes, real quick,
yeah. Although the broadcast is going to be already taken place, so it will have been on, but you can catch it on the rewind. But this Friday, Ross and I are going to be going back to the 1950s, covering the 1951 classic, which was my lead-in with Starlog cover number 10, When Worlds Collide. So that starred Richard Durr and also Barbara Rush.
And if anyone's into 50s and 60s sci-fi movies, we have let me see it. Volume 7 now of Golden Age of Sci-Fi music, and this one we pay tribute to Ib Melchior, and we have music from 3 of his movies: Time Travelers, Journey to the Seventh Planet, and Reptilicus.
Nice, very nice. Oh, and the show is Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, just in case you haven't.
Oh yeah, so if you're looking for it, not on the title.
And please like and subscribe on Facebook and YouTube, no charge. And Warren, the convention stuff, you want to just say anything about what's coming up, or you want to save it for Sunday?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's really just, there's been lots of inquiries as to the hotel and the location. So we're going to be able to reveal that on Sunday, so people can start booking. We'll know the location, but we probably won't have a booking link set up just yet. That will probably be 2 or 3 weeks down the road, but at least everybody will know where we're going to be at and located.
Exactly. So that's cool.
Yeah, for sure.
But
okay.
Thanks again, David.
Yeah.
Thanks, Warren.
Always a pleasure to see you, Mr. Hirsch.
On which one are we going to talk about next?
Well, episode number 16 is coming up next, and it's a little bit of a darker episode, and we're dealing with a person that basically does not die.
Is that the ITC summary?
And did you try and get in touch with the person I mentioned who should talk about this episode?
I probably am having a brain cramp. Is 58.
Wrote several books, including a sequel to this episode.
Oh yes.
Oh
okay,
yes.
Okay. Wait. John Kenneth Muir. No.
Mateo?
But John's good. Yes, but no.
Mateo.
Because it was in the Powers version. It was called Eternity Unbound, right?
Right, but that was Bill Latham.
Oh, Bill Latham.
Bill Latham.
Yeah.
Of course.
John wrote the book that I did the intro to, Whispering Sea, which was the sequel to Metamorph. And plus he wrote, short stories for Shepherd Moon. Yeah. But John Latham wrote the only book that was turned into an audiobook read by Barry Morse.
Actually, I will try to connect with Bill Latham, because
I would think he's the ideal person, because my question always been is, what's the appeal of the episode? It's so dark, why did he feel the need that it needed a sequel story?
Yeah.
Well,
there you go.
That would make a good episode. I'm
Great
full
idea.
of ideas.
With that said, we will be discussing End of Eternity the following week. So stay tuned, folks. We haven't ironed out everybody who's going to be joining us, but you'll find out. And with that said, haven't done this in a long time, even though it's a different genre.
I can't do it. Never could.
All right.
Thanks,
and
everyone.
on that note, I hate backseat drivers.
Nah, we've got lights.
And just remember that.
And the one thing we didn't say is, if nothing else, don't go into the mist.
Yes.
There you go. Sherry will appreciate that.
Remember, no matter what the weather is, don't go in the mist.
Don't go into the mist. There's a whole story behind that, but we'll save that.
And never be a backseat driver.
And never be a backseat driver.
Awesome. Okay, everyone. Thanks again.
All right. Good night.
See
Good night,
everybody
everyone.
next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.